Hi, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar. Thank you for joining us. We are going to be taking a deep look at the SASB Navigator, which we're very excited to show everybody. My name is Eli Reisman. I'm the Director of Partnerships here at SASB, and I'm going to be the host for the webinar today. And with me in the room is Trent Borman, who is the Manager of Technical Operations here at SASB. You'll be hearing his voice occasionally as he's reading questions from the audience. Before we get started, I want to address a few housekeeping items. The first is that everybody will be muted for this presentation, but we do have a chat feature in GoToWebinar that we would like you to use as you have questions. Please send them to us. Don't wait till the end of the webinar. At the end of each feature that we show within the Navigator, we will try and stop and see if there are any questions from the audience that we can answer. And if we don't get to everyone's questions, we'll try and answer them offline as well. The other note here, in terms of housekeeping items, is that this webinar will be recorded and sent out to everyone that registered for the webinar. So if you have a coworker that you would like to share this webinar with, or this information with, you will be sent a link later on or a few days after the webinar concludes. And with that, I am going to start the webinar. And to start, I think it's worth introducing the Navigator and giving everybody sort of a sense as to why SASB built this new tool. SASB had previously put out a version of this tool called the Standards Navigator, which was a digital version of all 79 of our industry standards. And this was a tool that was helpful in allowing people to access the standards easily and browse between two different industry standards. But there was so much more research that was happening here at SASB that we wanted to surface for a number of different communities. We thought that the research that we are producing could be helpful to the investment community, to the consultants, lawyers, auditors who are out there working with clients on SASB issues, and as well as the corporate sustainability professionals within companies who are looking at SASB as a potential solution for some of their sustainability needs. And so I'm going to walk through the standards or the SASB Navigator today and show you each of these different features and try and explain how we think that these different features could be useful to some of the different audiences that might be using this tool. And to get started, just like any web-based portal, you can sign right into the Navigator from the home page by clicking the sign-in link at the top of the screen. And so you come to the sign-in page. You use your email as the means for your unique identification. And then you log right into the Navigator. And for those of you who are familiar with the Standards Navigator, you're going to notice immediately that the new SASB Navigator looks quite a bit different from the previous version of the Navigator. We tried to make it very easy from the home page to jump directly to the 6 new features and functionality that we've built into this version of the Navigator. Starting with the standards, just like with the Standards Navigator, it's very easy to browse any of the 79 industry-specific standards that we have created, and I'll show you exactly what that looks like. We now have built into this tool the ability to view the underlying evidence that sort of helped us conclude that each of the different topics in our standards was likely material and was having a financial impact or likely to have financial impact on companies in each of our industries. You'll also see performance ranges, which looks at sustainability data aggregated at an industry-wide level, giving you a snapshot of what performance looks like today in each of the different industries. Additionally, down below, we are able to launch our Disclosure Intelligence tool, which is a brand new tool that looks at the public filings of 4,300 different companies and uses machine learning technology to surface where companies are actually disclosing information on SASB topics. We're very excited about this tool, and I think it'll be one that a lot of people on this webinar will be interested in. We also have a My Alerts function where you're able to gain access to a personalized subscription of alerts, so allows you to subscribe to the sectors, industries, and topics that you care about most, and then get updates from the SASB analyst team as to how their views are changing on each of their different topics. And then lastly, you also have the ability to run cross-sector searches on a thematic level across the entire SASB universe, and we'll show you exactly what that looks like as well. So you can jump to any of those features directly from the home page. The other thing to note is we still have our stock ticker lookup tool in here as well. So if you wanted to look up a specific company, all you need to do is type in their stock ticker, and it takes you directly to their primary 6 sector and industry, and you can actually jump to that industry standard here, or you can scroll down and select a sector and industry using this industry selector down below. For the purposes of this presentation, I'm going to be using the oil and gas exploration and production standards, but just know that all of the information that you see here today is available for all 79 of our industry standards. So the first thing that you see on the industry selector is it takes you directly to the 10 sectors that we have in our industry classification system. You would then select non-renewable resources, which takes you to the industries, and then you can select the oil and gas exploration and production standard. Once you select that particular standard, for those of you who are familiar with the Standards Navigator, this view is actually going to look pretty familiar. This is actually the industry standard that you're seeing in front of you today, where you can see the disclosure topics that are likely material for companies in the oil and gas exploration and production industry, starting with greenhouse gas emissions, air quality, water management, and so on. You receive an explanation of what this disclosure topic means in the industry, and you can always expand or contract to view the full description of this topic. And then you're also able to click in and see the accounting metrics that are associated directly with this topic, as well as the technical protocols that are seen in our standards for each of the different accounting metrics. So this user interface that we've designed is meant to make it really easy to dig into any part of all of our 79 industry standards and view only the information you want to look at that moment in time. So you can look at air quality, same thing with the accounting metrics, dig right into the technical protocol, and so on. So whether you're a company that is looking to use SASB standards and you want to sort of focus on a specific part of the standards, or you're a consultant that's looking to work through work with a client on a specific set of industry standards, having access to all 79 industry standards and being able to view the sections that are most relevant to the conversation you're having could be quite useful. The other thing that's worth noting in here is that there's a new section available for every one of our disclosure topics. And you can see it here. It's this Explore section where you can jump right into the evidence information, topic alerts information, performance information, and state of disclosure information. This is brand new, and to think about in terms of the scale of information in our tool, because I'm going to be taking you through one topic all the way through on each of these different Explore items. SASB has 79 industry standards, and on average we have about 5 disclosure topics per industry standard. So that works out to be about 400 disclosure topics that we cover as a universe. And so we have all of this information logged for each one of those disclosure topics, and you can jump right into it. So I'll start with the evidence information that we have in the industry standard, that we have in the tool. So we're going to look at greenhouse gas evidence. And so here you can see it takes you to a new screen that shows the evidence of financial impact information for greenhouse gas information related to the oil and gas exploration and production industry. The first thing you do is you get a description of the topic, and then down below you can see that we actually provide a table of financial value drivers. So we identify where this topic is likely to have financial impact on companies in this industry. And this is based off of our industry-based research that we do as an internal team. We also provide an evidence of financial impact description, which are the best examples that we found when going through and setting the standard of where this topic has had financial impact on companies in this industry already. And you can see that we've provided footnotes to all of the different sources that we provide, or that we're citing in this research information, which allows you to easily jump to the source information that we used in order to identify good examples of where this topic was having financial impact. The other thing that we have in here is the value of impact description information. And so this is essentially a summary of how this topic is likely to impact companies financially within the industry. So it's a summary of this table that you see up at the top. And we think that this information will be quite useful to a wide variety of users. We think for the investment community, being able to see the underlying evidence behind each of the different topics in our standards can be very useful for setting up strategies, for identifying topics that you want to dig into when putting together investment strategies. When thinking about it from a corporate sustainability perspective, having access to this information will allow companies to dig into exactly what SASB was thinking when it included specific topics in our standards, to see whether or not the way that we were thinking about these disclosure topics are relevant to the way that you're thinking about your business, and whether or not each of those topics are likely to be material to you. And the same goes for those who are working with companies as clients on SASB issues, being able to walk them through this process of identifying what is the evidence behind each of the different topics can be very useful when explaining why these different topics are likely to have financial impact on companies. So when thinking about the evidence of financial impact section, this is really the evidence that was used to help set the standard when the standard was issued. The next feature that we have here is the topic alerts feature. And so topic alerts are information that our sector analysts are surfacing during their research post-issuance of the standard. So this is all information that we are capturing, new pieces of evidence that are helping shape and form the way we think about these different topics that we are identifying after the standards have been issued, and we want to be able to surface to our community so that they can see exactly how our analysts are thinking about these different topics. So you can see here, David is the sector analyst for the non-renewable resources sector. David has posted a number of topic alerts on the greenhouse gas emissions topic for the oil and gas exploration and production industry. And in each alert, you can see the source that David pulled from, his view as to why this particular article is relevant to companies in this industry and how it's having financial impact on this topic. And then also the financial value drivers that are likely affected by the information in this topic alert. So it really gives you some detailed information as to why this piece of evidence is important to the industry. Now, the other cool thing about this topic alerts feature is that it makes interacting with our sector analysts here at SASB quite easy, because you can actually click on David's name and it will, I apologize, I don't have Outlook open, but it will actually open up an Outlook window for you. And that will allow you to write an email directly to David and say, "Hi David, I really think that you had a great view of this particular topic." Or you may disagree with him and say, "Hey David, you may want to think about this slightly differently. Have you read this other article?" But either way, we think it's really good to be able to sort of start interacting with our sector analysts as they're surfacing information that shows how they're thinking about each of the topics in their industries. With that, I want to make sure that I take a brief pause to see if there are any questions that have come through on either of these different features thus far. And it looks like we haven't gotten any questions thus far, so we will keep moving. But please, as you have questions, send them to us. We want to make sure that I'm being as clear as possible on all of the different features that we're demoing here for the SASB Navigator. So the next area, or the next feature that we have for this topic is the performance range information. So in the performance range feature, What we've done is through a collaboration with Bloomberg, who has one of the most extensive ESG data sets on the market, we have mapped all of the different companies within the Bloomberg universe to our industry classification system. So you can see there's 133 companies that have been mapped to the oil and gas exploration and production industry from the Bloomberg terminal. And then what we've also done is we've mapped all of the Bloomberg fields, the ESG fields that they have available, back to our accounting metrics. So where there was a Bloomberg field that matched one of our accounting metrics, we've mapped those two things together so that at an industry-wide level, we were able to surface what performance looks like according to the Bloomberg ESG data set. And so you can see here the first accounting metric for this topic is the gross global scope 1 emissions metric. And you can see within the Bloomberg database, they break out scope 1 emissions as information that's been issued. So scope 1 emissions that have been issued through a CSR report or listed on a website versus information that has been put through or that is issued through the CDP. And you can see that there are 20 companies that are issuing their scope 1 emissions the first way, 19 companies that are issuing their greenhouse gas emissions through CDP. And then you can actually see what is the min and max range for those companies that are disclosing this information. What is the average and the standard deviation, which really gives you a snapshot of what does performance look like within this industry on this particular topic. And we think this will be useful for a number of different audiences, for investors who are looking at performance from a company and trying to put it in perspective of a company's peers. We think that this will be a nice snapshot to do so, or a nice performance range to weigh that company against. For companies that are looking to benchmark themselves against their industry peers, we think this tool will be very useful. And for consultants that are looking to work with companies and help them understand where they fit in the industry, we think that this benchmark will also be quite useful. You'll notice here that on the right-hand side we have a proxy column where, because not all of the Bloomberg fields exactly match to our accounting metrics, we wanted to be able to identify proxy metrics that were close enough to our accounting metrics that were worth surfacing, but weren't exactly the same. The other thing worth noting is that there's not always going to be data in the Bloomberg terminal on each of our accounting metrics. And so you'll see this here, that for percentage coverage under regulatory programs, there was no data in the Bloomberg terminal on this particular metric, and same for these metrics down below. So for some accounting metrics, you're going to have lots of coverage. You can see there's a sample size of 59 for emissions reductions initiatives. For others, there's not going to be any data. And we expect that this data set will grow and become better over time as more and more companies are using SASB accounting metrics and disclosing that information to the public. Sounds like we have a question?
Yeah, so Eli, we've got a question here. How often is the Bloomberg information updated?
So we're looking at updating this information quarterly, but the nice thing that you can see here is you can always see that when the last update occurred in the system. So we have that information right at the top. Most of the ESG data that's in the Bloomberg terminal is annual information, so it's unlikely to change on a day-to-day basis. So we feel a quarterly or biannual update will likely capture most, if not all, of the most up-to-date and relevant information in the market.
And a Bloomberg terminal is not required to get this information.
Correct.
Right?
The Bloomberg terminal is not required to get this information here in the Navigator. Now, we do have a cross-promotion with Bloomberg, or I shouldn't say a cross-promotion, but as part of our collaboration with Bloomberg, Bloomberg does now provide an Excel template called the Environmental, Social, and Governance Data Snapshot Template, where you can pull SASB data for individual companies through that template. So if you wanted to look at, let's say, ExxonMobil, who would fall into this industry, and how they are performing on these SASB metrics, you can do so through the Bloomberg terminal using this link down below, but you do need access to the Bloomberg terminal to access that data.
Great.
Any other questions that are coming through on this topic?
I guess what percent of SASB metrics have data from Bloomberg?
That's a good question. I think it's a little over 50% have metrics from Bloomberg. It varies depending on the type of metrics that we have in our system. The environmental metrics tend to have a lot of coverage, whereas the social and governance metrics are a little oftentimes less covered within the terminal. So we are aware that there's going to be holes in the data, but we think it's almost as important to show where performance information is not being disclosed as it is to show where it is being disclosed, so that people get a sense of what information is currently being tracked and managed by companies that are having financial impacts on those companies themselves.
I guess, do we have a sense of how many companies are disclosing on this data?
That's actually a better question for Bloomberg. I don't
Okay.
have a good answer for that question. But I know that they are actually pulling publicly available information from sustainability reports, from corporate websites, from impact reports. CDP, they have, I think, relationships with CDP and GRI that allow them to source most of this data. So they have a number of different data sources where they are pulling that information from.
Great.
So I see that we have a few other questions that are coming in on this. I will make sure to follow up and answer questions, but seeing the time, I want to make sure that we get to some of the other features in the Navigator, because the next feature is the state of disclosure information, which is one that we're really excited about. So SASB over the last few years has run a project where we have looked at the top 10 companies by industry, and we have read through their 10Ks and 20Fs, so their annual filings to the SEC, and surfaced where those top 10 companies were talking about SASB metrics already, and whether or not they were talking about us using metrics, industry-specific language, boilerplate language, or no disclosure at all. Now, reading through, if you sort of extrapolate that out, that's 790 companies, 10Ks and 20Fs to do this. Give or take, I should say. But reading through 790 10Ks and 20Fs is a very manual process. But what we were able to build off of that project was a training set for a machine learning algorithm that could read any company's 10K, 20F, or 40F and surface whether or not they were talking about SASB topics. So to demonstrate, so you can actually launch the Disclosure Intelligence app, which is an internal application that runs parallel to the SASB Navigator from any of our topics, where you can see that machine learning data surfaced. And so if you click on Disclosure Intelligence within any industry, it'll take you directly to the industry page, where you can now see 139 companies have disclosed information to the SEC that were mapped directly to the oil and gas exploration production industry, and you can see all of the different, the percentages of companies that are disclosing using metrics, that are using company-tailored narrative, boilerplate, or no disclosure at all. And so one of the great things about this tool is that you're able to then scroll down and actually see each of the different companies that are listed in here. So if you wanted to look at Atlas Resource Partners LP, and you say, okay, I really want to see what Atlas is saying about air quality issues, you can click on air quality, and it actually surfaces the excerpts from that company's 10K on air quality. And you can see exactly what they wrote and how they're managing this issue. And some of them have multiple excerpts, some of them have only one excerpt. And because what we're using here is a machine learning algorithm, which is imperfect by nature, we tried to make it as precise as possible, but there's going to be times where either the excerpt that you see is not going to be relevant to the topic that it's tagged to, or you may disagree with the way in which we have classified this disclosure quality assessment. So here it's we're classifying this particular excerpt as a company-tailored narrative. You may think that it's actually boilerplate information. And what this tool allows you to do is disagree with our algorithm. So you can call this boilerplate, and that sends us feedback directly to our database and allows us to tag and retrain our algorithm as we go to make it more and more precise. The other nice thing that you can do with this tool is, let's say you wanted to go back up to the top here and actually dig in to a specific to which companies are disclosing metrics on a particular topic. So here we see greenhouse gas emissions. They are 2.2% of the 139 companies that are disclosing metric level data. You can come to these filters, click on greenhouse gas emissions, click on metrics, click filter, and that takes you directly to the 3 companies that are actually disclosing metric level data on this information. And you can click right in again to see what those metrics are and how those companies are disclosing this information. The other important thing to note, and I'm going to go back to the Navigator here. So here we're going back to the Navigator from the Disclosure Intelligence tool. I'm going to go to the home page. You can launch this Disclosure Intelligence tool right from the home page. And so if you click Explore right from the home page, it'll actually take you to a company search page where you're able to look up any company that you're interested in. So let's say Exxon, sticking with the oil and gas exploration and production theme, is the company you want to look at. And so you can go right to ExxonMobil's company page where you can see all of the topics, what industry they're mapped to, all of the topics that are relevant for that industry, how Exxon is disclosing on each of those topics, and then what does that look like in comparison to the rest of the industry in terms of percentage coverage. So you can see here Exxon is disclosing on or not disclosing on 2 topics that are not actually well covered in the industry, but they are disclosing on, let's say, community relations, where only 11% of the non-renewable of the oil and gas exploration and production companies are disclosing information within the market. So this is a useful tool for sort of looking at a specific company and trying to benchmark a company's disclosure to the rest of the rest of the company's disclosure in their industry. Let's say you also saw that there's 2% of companies that are disclosing information on security, human rights, and rights of indigenous peoples, and you wanted to then see who are those 2% of companies that are disclosing this information in the industry. You can go right back to the oil and gas exploration and production page and quickly filter again using those corporate filters that we had earlier. So you can come here and you can say human rights, and then you can look at all of the disclosures that are happening there. And then you can quickly see here are the companies that are disclosing on that particular issue, where Exxon is not disclosing information, and what does that disclosure actually look like? Why is it that Exxon may want to actually start disclosing information on this issue as some of their peers are already doing? So the great thing about this tool, there's 4,300 companies covered in here. It's every company that we could find that issued a 10K, 20F, or 40F. And you can click right into any of the other industries that we cover as an organization. So if you wanted to see what airlines look like, you could quickly jump to the airlines industry and see the 15 companies that are covered and what those organizations are disclosing. So it's a very useful tool. It's one that we hope lots of people will start digging into and using as a way to see what disclosure looks like on SASB topics already in 10Ks, 20Fs, and 40Fs. Lastly, because we only have a few minutes left, I want to note that we have a My Alert section. And this My Alert section allows you to, for those topic alerts that you saw on each topic, you can subscribe to any sector, or if you want just specific industries, you can subscribe to industries, or you can just subscribe to specific topics. And when you once you set your subscription, when you go to the My Alert section, it'll allow you to load any information, or for whatever time range you're interested in, all of the topic alerts that have been pushed into our system just on the topics that you're interested in. So if you only cover a specific sector or specific industries, or only care about specific topics, you can get alerts on just those things that you care about. And here you can see all of the different things that have been pushed through over that specific time range. Additionally, you can also subscribe to an email alert. That's a weekly email alert that gets pushed out to all users just on the topics that you subscribe to. So you can get updates from our sector analysts on just those things that matter to you. And then lastly, we also have a cross-sector search functionality in the tool. And we think that this will be quite useful for searching thematically across SASB's universe. So if you wanted to look at the non-renewable resources sector, and you only cared about looking at the topics that are related to greenhouse gas emissions, And this tool allows you to return whatever information in your search that you're interested in. So let's say you really wanted those financial drivers tables that we saw in the evidence of financial impact, the accounting metrics, and the state of disclosure. You can quickly search for that information, and it will return for you, starting with the iron and steel producers industry, which is in the non-renewable resources, each of the different topics that are related back to greenhouse gas emissions, and then those 3 items that you selected. So it's a way of combining all of this information in the tool across sectors and industries and allowing you to surface the information and cross-compare in a way that's useful to you. Additionally, if you wanted to look at what data is available from that Bloomberg from the Bloomberg performance ranges that we've put together. Let's say you wanted to look at automobiles, and you only cared about. So we're looking at we're selecting only this industry, and we want to look at what the performance range looks like for that industry. So what data is available, and what does that look like across all of the different metrics in the standard? You can quickly see what data is available in the Bloomberg terminal and maps directly to the SASB accounting metrics, so where there's more disclosure and where there might be less disclosure. So we think that this will be a useful search functionality that will allow you to really look at the information that you think that's most important to you. So with that, I know that we're 1 minute over time, and I want to respect everybody's time. For those of you who want to stay on, I'm happy to answer a few questions. For those of you who want to drop off but have additional questions, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to answer any additional questions that you have. So thank you for joining today's call. So Trent, if we have any follow-up questions, I'm happy to answer those as we sort of wrap up the webinar.
Yeah. So for the disclosure intelligence excerpts, can you print those?
There is no print functionality. That's something that we have in our product pipeline. It's one of the things that we're looking at in terms of being able to create a report. Now you can certainly PDF any screen that you have on your through whatever web browser that you're looking at, but we don't have an explicit functionality built into the tool yet. It's something that we're looking at. The other thing that we're looking at that's worth noting to those of you on the call is now that we have 2015 data loaded into the disclosure intelligence tool, so that's all of the information that's in there were 10Ks, 20Fs, and 40Fs that were related to the 2015 financial year. We can now go back to 2014, 13, 12, and 11 and rerun our algorithm over those years worth of data to start surfacing trends on each of the different disclosure topics we have in our standards. So that's another area that we're looking to build into the product pipeline and should be available in early next year.
Is a trial available?
Yes, so that's very important. There's a free trial available for anybody that's interested in looking at the tool. I'm logging out so that I can go back to the Navigator homepage. It's very easy to get a free trial. All you need to do is click on the free trial button and register yourself through this easy registration page. A credit card is required to do a free trial, but as you see here, we have pricing available. You can see that it's a $1,200 list price for the tool, and we're running a $200 discount for anyone that registers before the end of the year, and you can enter this NAV discount code in order to get that $200 discount. For those of you who don't have a credit card available to you in order to run the trial, please email us, and you can see we have a pay by invoice function. So if you email SASB _navigator at sasb.org, we will find a way to set you up with a free trial as well as an invoicing process rather than a credit card charging process. It's also worth noting that we have volume pricing for companies that are interested in purchasing 5 or more seats for the Navigator, and we also have academic pricing for those of you who are working at academic institutions and want to add this kind of a tool as a whitelisted tool that anyone within your institution can use, or anyone in a specific class would like to use.
For the companies in the DI, the Disclosure Intelligence tool, are those U.S. companies or global?
So they are. So we have 10Ks, 20Fs, and 40Fs in the tool. 10Ks are all domestic companies that are listed on U.S. stock exchanges. 20Fs, and I believe there's about, I want to say over 400, 500 20Fs that we have in the tool, which are foreign companies that are listed, that are publicly listed in the U.S. And then 40Fs are all Canadian companies that are publicly listed in the U.S. So it does have a lot of global companies in the tool. And I believe when you put together all of the companies that are listed on the major U.S. stock exchanges, it represents, I want to say, about 80% of the capital markets. So it provides a pretty wide coverage on companies that are out there.
Great. I think that's about it. If your questions weren't answered, we'll try to follow up with you guys. And I think that's all, right, Eli?
I think that's it. So thank you all for taking the time and learning about the Navigator. If you have any questions, please follow up with either of us, and we hope that you will all take a free trial and really start digging into this new tool that we're excited to share with the world. So thank you very much.